So this time around we want to replace this entire section of JSX with a reusable select component. And not surprisingly, the first thing I'll do is go to Form Components and create a new file, and I'll call it select.js. And I'll use the same syntax and logic that I did for the other components. I'll create a constant, which I'll call select, and it will be equal to, and we'll take props as a receiver or an item, and make it a standard arrow form. And we'll return some JSX. So we'll return, and I'll just close this so I don't forget to. And here we'll have a div with a class name equal to, try that again, class name equal to MB3. And we'll give it a label with HTML4 equal to props.name. And we'll give it a class name of form label. And then I'll have an empty space here in case there is no title. Otherwise, I'll put in props.title. And again, if there is no title, give nothing. Okay, so there's our label. Now let's create our select element. Select, and its class name will be equal to form select, because I'm using Bootstrap, so I don't mind hard-coding the class name, but you can make that a property if you want to. The name will be equal to props.name, and the value will be equal to props.value, and the onChange will be equal to props.handleChange. And we'll close that. This div doesn't belong there. There. It belongs down here. Okay, so let's format that just to get it a little cleaner. And inside of our select, of course, we want to have our options. So first of all, we'll put a default option in there. Option value equals nothing. And we'll put in a props.placeholder. And then I'm going to assume we're going to be passing something we can use the map function on. So props.options, that's what I'll call it, and then we'll call map. And we'll call each individual entry option and use an arrow function, just like we did in the many other cases. And we'll return an option that has a class name equal to form select from Bootstrap. The key, I'll make that option.id, and the value will be equal to option.id, and the label will be equal to option.value. Then we'll close that option, and here we'll just put option.value. And down here, we'll export it. Export default select. Okay, I think that all looks right. We'll find out shortly. So let's go back to editmovie.js and go to the top, and we'll import that. Import select from /form components /select. And go back down and find where that HTML actually is. So here it is. So let's comment this out. And put in our select component. And then, of course, we have to populate the options. But we'll get to that in a moment. So we'll use select. And we'll close it. And in the middle, we'll put title equals MPAA rating. And name is equal to MPAA rating. And we'll also want options, and this doesn't exist yet, but we'll create it in a minute, is equal to this.state.mpaa options. And value is equal to movie.mpaa rating, and handle change will be equal to this.handle change. And finally, we'll give it a placeholder. Placeholder. I'll just make that equal to choose. Okay, so there's our select component. Now let's go back up and actually populate in the state default values for MPAA options. And I'll just put them right between these. So we'll have an entry called MPAA options, and that will be an array, so we can iterate over it using map, but each entry will be an object, ID G and value G. Now you may have noticed I could have just made this a straight array of strings, but there are many situations where you're not going to want to do that, where you're going to want to have, say, a numeric value for the ID and the value, and the label will be something else. So there we go. That's our first one, and I'll just duplicate this a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next one is PG, and the value will be PG, and then PG-13, which will be PG-13, then R, which is R, and then NC-17, which is NC-17. Add a comma here, and in theory this should all work. So let's switch to our web browser and find out. So everything looks good down here. We have those necessary values for MPAA options, and now I should be able to choose, say, PG, and see the MPAA rating change to PG, and it does. Okay, so the next step is to modify the component didMount function in this class to actually fetch data from our remote API and pre-populate this form with an existing movie. And we'll take care of that in the next lecture.